Hello, friends. Thanks for joining us again. We're going to be talking about Chapter 2 of A Course in Miracles today.
Are we going to start with the origins of separation, or are we just going to talk a little bit about the chapter in general first?
Yeah, let's just start with the origins, separation. What do you have? I'll let you start with something.
The concept of extension, I liked. Our likeness to the Creator, thought was also good, which reminds me of Buddha nature, of course, so I always like that.
Yep.
The
Well, let's.
inappropriate use of extension or projection. So, the inappropriate use of extension, otherwise known as projection, occurs when you believe that some emptiness or lack exists within you and that you can fill it with your own ideas instead of truth. That was a really good line.
Let's break that down. Um. So, what does that look like in practical terms? If you're filling it with your own ideas. So, in practical terms, isn't that talking about like basically thinking that you're going to get something from the world?
Yeah, it's having some agenda for the self by the self. And like you when you see the world, you're seeing preferences of that self, or you're seeing a means to acquire whatever it is the self is going for, instead of the pure version of that would be extension, where it's like everything is me, we're all part of the same thing, it's just love extending in all directions, and so you see things oriented properly, and of
Hmm.
course without egoic projection on top of that. That's what I thought was
Hmm.
great.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so this selfish construction that's taking place, um, that takes the form of an idea, right? It's like you have an idea that the idea is that I'm a person and there's a world out there and there's something in the world that I want and I'm going to go get it for myself. That's an idea,
Or even
right?
simpler than that, it could be
Okay.
like I feel a certain way, and it's because of whatever, like something I see in the external world is causing this upset. Instead of turning attention towards your own mind, you're looking for causes outside of you.
Mm,
And that would be the projection. You're going to project that cause for your own internal upset.
okay. Yep.
So that was just paragraph one. So that
Yep.
was a pretty good one. It has more after that. There's like steps of error,
Let's
which are
read
sort
those
of
really
okay.
quick. Uh, let's just read these really quick. So, first, you believe that what God created can be changed by your own mind. Um, well, let's talk about that.
That's why I was thinking they're just okay, because you have to take this premise, and I don't take premises. like, of I guess we're trained in
Yeah.
like an investigative sense, instead of just like taking things to be true. But
Yep.
I guess if you first you believe that what God created can be changed by your own mind, so it's just rejection
Hmm.
of reality. Is another way to put that.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess the way I would say that is like basically God didn't create self and other. God didn't create any selves. And so you believe that you can create yourself when God didn't create that. That's how I read that. Yeah, and so then second, you believe that what is perfect can be rendered imperfect or lacking. Um so again, so God created a perfect wholeness, right? And so you're believing that because a self is inherently limited, a self means that there's an individual that doesn't have everything else that's outside it. So there's like what you have and then everything else. So that would be imperfect or lacking. And these are both beliefs, right? These are just, and so like, I think that's like at least worth mentioning that when we're talking about the origins of separation, it's like, it's always an idea or a belief. It's like, and ideas and beliefs are both, how would you describe them? I would say they're like mental constructs.
Mm-hmm.
They're
I guess an
formations.
idea or notion or concept is just like a mental happening,
Yeah.
and we decide that that happening has gravity or that it means something,
Yeah.
and then bam, you have a belief.
Great. So so basically this is saying that all of that is directly causes the separation.
Yeah. Well, it's four distinct beliefs as listed. So, third, you believe that you can distort the creations of God, including yourself. Basically, you think you can change the contents, and so you're treating them as not illusions. So that's a no-no. Fourth, you believe that you can create yourself and that the direction of your own creation is up to you. So the
Mm-hmm.
assumption that there is an entity here controlling anything.
Yep.
I should
All
say a
right.
separate entity or controlling anything.
What else is there to say about that? Guess we can move on to
Well, number
section
two
two.
starts with, yeah, the related distortions represent a picture of what actually occurred in the separation or the detour into fear. None of this existed before the separation, nor does it actually exist now. So we recognize that as karmic obscuration. Whereas these things are affecting us all the time, affects our like it distorts our perception in a very real way, even though the thing distorting it has no substance or inherent existence at all.
Yeah. Let's break this down a little bit more and just like kind of summarize again. Okay, so this line, none of this existed before the separation, nor does it actually exist now. So like I guess I want to remind everyone that the whole course, um, or you could say dharma, is um, correcting our perception, right? So we've made an error in our perception and we're not seeing clearly what is the truth. So so some of this stuff that seems like it can seem contradictory because it's like we have these ideas and beliefs and to us they seem real. So we think they're real. We think the self is real. Um and it's saying here that they don't actually exist now. And so it's like, what does that mean? Well, it's because we're making shit up, basically, is what this is saying. That's all, what all of this is about, is we're making things up, and what we're making up is disturbing us.
Yeah, 100%.
So it doesn't exist now, and the whole task of this is to see clearly, using the Holy Spirit or the right mind, that all of the shit we're making up doesn't actually exist. And then it'll stop disturbing us. Is that an okay summary?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, just I want to, because it always comes back to that. It always is like, um, in this book talks so much about like it goes into all the like gory details about what we made up and how it messes with us, how it disturbs us, how it separates us basically from love. Apparently, not actually, because right, because none of that is really happening. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like it could have just kept restating that in different ways, but it went yeah, even this section just goes hard in the details or like examples, arguments supporting, which I get, but it's not necessary to cover like each and every one. I don't think
Yeah.
it's
Well,
just like you said. It's all about beliefs and how they don't have inherent existence until we try to make them real. Which I suppose is that's the first. So first you believe that what God created can be changed by your own mind. So that's the first obscuration is that you think by having beliefs anything about reality can change. So that's the first mistake.
that's such a good one, man. That's so juicy right there. Like, if you really can accept that, like, there's a lot in there, right? That undoes the whole ordeal. Thinking that your beliefs can change creation. Okay, so
The
can
next
we talk a
paragraphs
little?
are about miscreation and misperception. I didn't know if you wanted to cover miscreation or not.
Let's see. Well, let's talk a little bit about so in this paragraph three, just the first line. The Garden of Eden, or the pre-separation condition, was a state of mind in which nothing was needed. So I just want to talk about that again because, well, that's very pertinent even for me right now because this sort of like where I'm at in my process is this feeling that something is needed, and it's usually not clear what that even is. Uh, and of course that I mean that's a whole can of worms because like it can never be clear what is needed because there is nothing that's actually needed. Like thinking that something is needed is itself a distortion in your perception. And so but I don't recognize that I'm actually in the state where nothing is needed. And so that lack of recognition, the perception that something is needed disturbs me and it causes me to try to change or to interact with my
Yeah.
experience in the world in a way so that I'm going to get what I need, even though that none of that actually does anything. It doesn't change anything.
Yeah. That's what we're programmed for, but that's not how we fix the problem.
Can you speak to what's that?
Go ahead.
Can you speak to the state of mind in which nothing is needed? Like, is that real, or is that what do you think about that? Is that just how do we understand that?
It's interesting that he uses, or that the phrase the Garden of Eden is used, because I think we could have attributed that to the Holy Spirit also, or a state of surrender. And in those cases, there's no ego to need. Like there's no
Hmm.
sense of self generating the neediness feeling.
Hmm.
So I'm assuming that's what's being pointed to, or at least the Garden of Eden in that case is just the mind in a state of surrender, as opposed to the entirety of the Holy Spirit. Would you say that's accurate?
I have no idea. I'll go along with it though. What about this? All right, so here's another just two lines later. Let's go into this. Or so the third sentence in the third paragraph. You do not have to continue to believe what is not true unless you choose to do so. And then the next line, all that can literally disappear in the twinkling of an eye because it is merely a misperception. So this is another thing that comes up a lot in the course, which is sort of this suggestion that like all of this can be over immediately if you decide for it to be over. What do you think about that?
That's pretty tough
Yeah,
because we know from experience that atonement has stages. Like I mean, do we know of people in, say, in other religions who have gone from zero to completely enlightened in an instant?
instantaneously.
Like, not even like Jesus didn't do that. He went to some place and learned and came back over a period of years. Shakyamuni had all of his like trials and ascetic practices before sitting at the tree. So I want to say like revelation is possible like that, but to get the whole way, to like to blow through all the layers of mind all at once, of course, I don't want to say it's impossible, but would
Yeah.
be like the rarest of rare things as far as practitioners.
Yeah, for sure. Well, now let's see if we can think about this. I wonder if we can think about this another way. Like, um, so how do I want to say this? So basically, like the beliefs, the beliefs that keep us trapped in this perceived separation, um, the beliefs also don't have inherent reality. Let's just see if I can make this connection. So they don't inherently exist. If we're not like if we don't have a belief in our mind right now, there is no belief. So I wonder if what this is saying is like we're caught up in this we're in this state of separation, perceived separation currently. And it can literally disappear in the twinkling of an eye right now if we do if we do the practice, if we uh join with the Holy Spirit, basically. And that
I think
is,
you're right about
yeah.
that. That's
So,
more accurate than my interpretation for sure.
but it's important to talk about this because people, I see this a lot, that course students sort of think, and it's along the same lines of like, Neo-Advaita non-duality teachers who will say like, oh, you just like instant enlightenment. You can just see right now that whatever, there's no self or other, and then you can be completely done. And that's not really the case. But I do like that this kind of it does bring it back. If we understand this correctly, it does kind of bring it back to the practice. It's certainly the practice that you and I do, which is that always in every moment we're trying to join with the Holy Spirit and see clearly what is going on. So basically, this is available in every moment.
Yeah.
And that is the practice, is always to and when you do join with the Holy Spirit, it I still can't say that it disappears immediately because it as our teacher likes to say, we are organic uh entities. So the body and the brain sort of has this lag time. So even if we join with the Holy Spirit, like it takes a second for stuff to sort of I'm losing it here. The perceptions help me out.
I think you're totally right about it being it's a moment by moment instruction instead of telling you that you can be fully enlightened immediately.
Yeah,
You can cultivate a state that allows for insight immediately. Like you can
right.
stop selfing immediately. And in that case, the moment that you're not selfing, you are in the same state as an enlightened being or Jesus or whatever. Like you're in the Christ mind. Whether it goes recognized is a different thing, but you are in the state at least, and that's totally true.
Yeah. I think what I was actually stumbling on there for a second is so this idea that and this is a tricky one. It can be a tricky one, but um, just because you've joined with the Holy Spirit in your mind doesn't mean that all of these sensations that you previously associated as bad all of a sudden disappear. It's just,
That's right. The judgment goes away,
yeah,
which is important. But these sensations, yeah, they'll hang around for a moment or two.
yeah. And this is relevant because we've been, doing the two-part formula with people, and it's like, so we join with the Holy Spirit, and then we look at we bring the darkness to it, we bring the ego to it, and look at it. And I think sometimes, once we like cut through the ego by looking at it with the Holy Spirit, it will kind of fade away slowly over the course of a few minutes during the meditation. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just is there, and it like wants to be persistent and stuck, and we're just looking at it. And even though we're with the Holy Spirit, it's still like it's still there, right? It's
Yeah.
and that's okay
Like
too.
you said, there's a lag time.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you're just like you're on the knife's edge of insight, and there's this last little bit of surrendering to perception that just hasn't happened yet. So you're just like sitting right up against the judgment, essentially.
This was actually happening to me. It might have been yesterday when I was meditating in the last couple of days, and uh, I found this tension. I can't even remember where it was. It was somewhere in my head. It might have even been like in my near my nose or something, but I found it, and like um I just couldn't relax it. I couldn't surrender it, and I couldn't surrender it. And it wasn't especially strong, and I felt like I was so close to, like it was just barely holding on. And I was trying to, I mean, that's sort of the paradox is like I was trying to relax it. And of course, what does that mean? Like, I mean, I just wasn't able at that time to like, and usually, I mean, different things are, sometimes you can surrender big tensions really easily as soon as you see them. And sometimes ones that aren't even that big of a deal are just like stubborn. And it's like, this it just doesn't want to go away right now.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway.
Or they're in a blind spot. Like you don't even see that they're there, but you see the product, which is tension and discomfort, but you don't know, like you can't see the root.
That might have been what was going on, is like I could feel the results of it, and I was like looking at it very, I could clearly see what was the feeling that was going on as a result of this, but I just didn't find the root of it, and so I couldn't release it. Anyway.
Well, like the Course says, it all happens at the level of thought, right? Like it's all level of mind and perception and everything. So like the stuff in the body is only a flag. It's still great
Yep.
because when you release something on the level of belief, like your body reacts with release, and that's awesome. But
Hmm.
I haven't been able to like uproot anything physically. It always goes back to perception eventually.
All right. Should we move to paragraph 4? Is there something else in paragraph 3 we need to talk about? There's
I
some
think
kind
we're
of,
good with three.
yeah. I don't want to talk about, it's tempting to go into this conversation about how the world has not yet experienced any comprehensive reawakening or rebirth, but that is a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah, it really is. There's
I
something in
highlighted,
paragraph 4 that I
go
feel
ahead.
like this could be reduced to fewer statements, maybe.
Okay.
And maybe I can just skip around to a few of the lines. So, all fear is ultimately reducible to the basic misperception that you have the ability to usurp the power of God. In other words, that you can change reality with the mind, like was said before. Of course, you neither can nor have been able to do this. Here's the real basis for your escape from fear. The escape is brought about your acceptance of the atonement, which enables you to realize that your errors never really occurred. I'll skip ahead to this towards the end. This release does not depend on illusions. The knowledge that illuminates not only sets you free, but also shows you clearly that you are free. So we're often equivocating atonement with liberation as we understand it. And so this totally jives. Mm-hmm. So the knowledge that illuminates not only sets you free, but also shows you clearly that you are free. So that's when you can fully accept that as reality, that is your reality. And then all these other misperceptions around that just stop happening. Mm-hmm. Including the ideas that stem from those misperceptions and everything. I may have over-reduced that, but that's what I got out of that paragraph.
I think that's good. No, I think that's good. The only thing I was going to like take another direction out of that, which is this line that the escape is brought about by your acceptance of the atonement, which enables you to realize that your errors never really occurred. So this is the foundation of forgiveness right here, is like realizing that your errors never really occurred, and neither did anybody else's errors. The other day I was trying to talk about forgiveness, and it's forgiveness is super, super simple. We try to make it complicated.
Yeah. Well, our objects that we think need forgiving are complicated and many. Like, it's just like with this book, like the way it approaches the truth is by addressing all the facets and then pointing to the truth, but still addressing all these things. I feel like forgiveness is just that also. Like you can forgive notions about the past, the future, judgments of your brothers and all these things, and it kind of like goes around the seed of truth, but at least it's still doing the activity of like enlightened activity is still present in forgiveness.
Right. So I want to talk about this a little bit more. So as a practical matter, so even before I found Amrita Mandala and the practice that Trevor and I do, the Tantric practice, I had this realization basically about misperception and forgiveness, just in my own contemplations, and because I was a very judgmental person. I'm still a little bit judgmental, but way less than I was, and I was constantly like, dude, just everything, judging everybody for everything all the time. Like, you did this wrong, you did that wrong. You could say I was critical, and always seeing this. And one day I just realized that basically that, well, there's many different ways to phrase this. One is that everybody is always doing the best they can with what they have or with what they know. But another way you could say that is everybody is always just reacting to their perceptions, or really their misperceptions. And so all of this stuff, all of the things that we think people are doing wrongly and badly, that things that need to be forgiven, right, because they did something bad, it's all only because they're misperceiving. It's just, and when you see it that way and you realize for yourself that everything you've done that you could say was wrong or bad or a sin was just that you misperceived the situation. And the misperception always is the same. It's always the same misperception. It's that you're you're looking at what is actually a perfect holiness that God created, and you're seeing something other than that. You're seeing some imperfection that's based on a separation of me, me and you, self and other.
Yeah, you're seeing what does this mean to me? What does this mean to society, which is basically, a big group of others. And yeah, it's a total mess.
And so it's but it's cool because um just tossing out words now, but the miracle uh the miracle of forgiveness, God, somebody's going to crucify me for using that combination of words. But it always works the same. Like there aren't different solutions for different kinds of things that need to be forgiven. It's always the same solution. Like it says here, all fear is ultimately reducible to the basic misperception that you have the ability to usurp the power of God. So
We can add that. We can add another layer to that. What does that misperception usually involve? So we know it's involving the self and the implicit other. But I mean, why is the behavior something that we cringe from or that we reject or that we wish we could change? And it's because we know, like, we recognize that that misperception comes from fear, I think. And when someone else is afraid, we're also afraid in that little way, either afraid for them or afraid for us. And so we can react in whatever way we do. Like if we're anxious types, we react with anxiety. If we're angry, we react that way. But like all these, the whole narrative just jumps out of nothing just because you saw what you consider to be other and how that relates to yourself. And like that's what other people are doing all the time. Everyone's afraid all the time and is confused and is afraid about that confusion. And they really are doing their best even when they think they're doing evil. Like even when that person thinks that they're doing wrong and they feel like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. All of that is based on them being like they're being accosted by their own thoughts that they think are real. And you
I like
really
this
can't help but
conversation.
treat them like a toddler.
Yeah.
Like you just see everyone like little kids.
Dude, so I want to keep talking about this because the practical uh basically what happens when you actually practice the course or when you practice any dharma and start seeing this, um you free yourself from those reactions. I mean, to the extent that you've progressed according to the atonement, right? So you are liberating yourself from those misperceptions. I don't know what else I was going to say about that. But yeah, like you said, I mean, well, basically the long and the short of it is you just feel better because you're not
Feel less fear.
yeah, you have less fear, and you don't, even though you can see when people are taking things to be real, taking their thoughts to be real, their thoughts about separation, you don't agree with them about that. You don't believe in what they're making real. So it doesn't have the same hold over you, basically.
Yeah. I mean, in a literal sense, you see a person caught in a dream. That's exactly what it's like. And you just have compassion for them. Now, like other, maybe more dynamic energy is required sometimes, like as the situation requires. But I mean, on the level of perception, you see a whole being just caught in a dream, and it's making them upset.
Hmm. And the basis for that is having done, oh, and this is mentioned later, I'm not sure where, but in this chapter, that the only task of the miracle worker is to to go geez, to attain the atonement for themselves. I don't remember the word, but to do the atonement process for yourself. And it's actually that allows you to see that in other people. Seeing it in other people is also part of the practice. That I'm getting ahead of myself now, because it talks about that later too. That we're trying to perceive people as being, charity is perceiving people as basically further along in the atonement than they may actually be. But having actually made progress towards the atonement for ourselves is what unlocks that ability to see other people as confused, and therefore your just judgment just falls away, because you don't see that they did something wrong. You don't
Yeah.
perceive that they did something wrong. You don't perceive sin, basically.
Yeah, 100%.
Alrighty. Do you want to talk about that last line again? The knowledge that illuminates not only sets you free, but also shows you clearly that you are free. This is full of like good, nice, juicy words, right? Knowledge that illuminates.
Yeah, I mean that's almost out of the Bodhisattva vows. I vow to exercise the Dharma that frees.
And so the knowledge that illuminates is, you could say that belongs to the Holy Spirit, right?
Yeah,
Because the ego thought system that we're mostly caught up with is not capable of knowledge or illumination. But the Holy Spirit, as is said elsewhere in the Course, always knows the difference between what's true and what's false, or knows, just naturally, inherently knows the difference between what God created and what we are miscreating. And so the Holy Spirit illuminates the fact, the already existing fact that you are free, and
yeah,
so frees you from your illusions. That's what I wanted to say about that. It's really a tricky, I mean, all of this stuff is tricky without the experience, because it's like, like people say this sometimes about spirituality, but it's like you're in a prison of your own making. Like, you actually are free, and you're just sitting in the prison because you don't want to open the door and leave. And it's just so hard. It's really hard to accept.
yeah. It's hard to, yeah, because you have all these beliefs to the contrary, and your beliefs are being projected into your environment by you, but you don't know how, or maybe you don't recognize it. But that's literally the whole problem.
We're going so slowly through this. We were talking about having to break this chapter up into 2 sections, but at this rate, it's going to take a lot more than that. All right,
Yeah, at
what
this
else you
rate, it'll be
got?
3.
What else? What do we want to do next?
I liked section 4, but man, it's pretty loaded.
Section 4, skipping.
Yeah, would you like to talk about 2 and 3?
We're skipping past the atonement as defense and the altar of God. You're talking about healing as release from fear.
Yeah.
Sure, we'll go with that. I like the altar conversation, but it's a little bit weird.
Let's do it. I'm open to it.
I don't even
It's
know.
in such an alien way of communicating. I'm just not used to it.
So I was going to say, I don't even, uh, like, I'm not even going to read this, but for me, the altar, I actually like it as part of my practice, in an experiential way. And I honestly don't know if this lines up, or if this is like what was intended, but um okay, so like well, we do that. We do this practice as well, or at least it's like something that's available. But like, if we have a difficulty um, at all in life, like we can offer it up to the gurus or the masters. We can offer it to Jesus, and sometimes the way that I like to think about it is placing it on the altar. But this is really this is like an experiential thing where, so I don't really think about the body as a temple, but I mean, I guess that's fine. But the altar is basically your central channel, the center channel that has now I have to explain all this stuff, right? But it's where the enlightened energy from the gurus comes into your body from the 11th, 12th, and 13th bhumis. So we have this, basically we have this channel or a beam of pure energy coming from above our head and from below and going through the middle of the body. And so when I think about placing things on the altar, like, well, you're putting things on the altar to purify them. So basically I just put my attention on the center channel in my body and imagine and feel the pure energy coming from the masters. And if like, basically if I'm practicing with Jesus, his light is focused on the altar, in usually it's like in my head, or but it can also be in my heart, but it's in there in my body, well actually in my mind, but apparently in my body. And I put the
That's my
difficulty
first
there.
question about all this. Is that what is the altar really? Is it your mind's eye? Is it your mind's eye of your heart? Or is it like your idea of your inner landscape?
Well, for me it's like it is a spatial, it it's with reference to your spatial body. Oh, I don't like how I said that, but like it's a visualization practice. Basically,
Okay.
your body is the temple, and in the center of it is the altar, and the light shines directly on the, like if you think about a temple with a hole in the top and the sun is directly overhead, the light shines straight down and hits what's on the altar. So whatever is on the altar is getting purified. Basically, that's you put um basically anything that isn't enlightened, anything that's dark, you put it on the altar, and that's where that's where you can look at it the most clearly with the Holy Spirit or with Jesus or with another master. It's the center of it's the center of attention. So it seems like it has a more it's like the most powerful place to purify darkness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, I like the whole idea a lot better now that you put it that way.
Yeah. It's a very, and so like it's a visualization basically, and it's helping you, it's like amplifying, because if you have something that's bothering you just in general, like an experience that's bothering you, if it's going to be somewhere in your mind spatially, like you can find it. But the suggestion that I'm making is that the most illuminated place is the altar. That's the place that has the most light because it's coming directly from the enlightened energy centers above, directly above and below our body. So I'm imagining putting the darkness in the place with the most light so I can see it more clearly. That's really all it is. But the visualization helps for me.
That's awesome. I like that.
Okay.
I see in here where it says, so perceiving the body as a temple is only the first step in correcting this distortion. I skipped a lot
Yep.
because it alters only part of it. It does recognize that atonement in physical terms is impossible, which is a very important note. The next step, however, is to realize that a temple is not a structure at all, and its true holiness lies at the inner altar around which the structure is built.
Yep.
So, yeah,
And
the
that's
center of attention. Put it.
yeah, and I mean this is getting into all the energy body stuff, but that is how it works, right? Like this, the center channel is where the source comes in, and then it radiates out through our body through the temple, basically. So it's like and actually stained glass mirrors makes me think of stained glass mirrors because they take the pure light and then make it into colors, which is sort of like what our body is doing with enlightened energy. But yeah, none of this is actually about, it's not about the body or about something physical in you. It's about your mind.
The real beauty of the temple cannot be seen with the physical eye. Spiritual sight, on the other hand, cannot see the structure at all because it is perfect vision. It can, however, see the altar with perfect clarity.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Pretty great.
Yeah, and then this next sentence here on section 2, for perfect effectiveness, the atonement belongs at the center of the inner altar, where it undoes the separation and restores the wholeness of the mind. So
Yes.
yeah, and I
And
mean we
fear
could
can,
get into. Go ahead.
before the separation of the mind, like before the separation, the mind was invulnerable to fear because the fear did not exist. I was just saying fear came back, or at least the notion of fear didn't exist. I don't know if the feeling did or did not. I guess I understand why it did not if there's no self.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. I think I don't. We don't need to go any further into this. It's like we're kind of getting into tantric stuff where, because with our practice, we're like working with energies and moving them around in our mind, but seemingly in places in the body. And really, all we're doing is spreading light, or yeah, we're just spreading light into the places that seem dark. But since the correction occurs at the level of thought, it's like it could seem like we're doing things with the body, like that we're trying to address the body, but really it's all addressing the mind. I hope I haven't made this more
Yeah, it's more like
confusing.
proving to ourselves over and over that the body is not the limit. It's not. It's not even really the structure or the container or anything. It's just a projection of the mind. But the process of discovering that involves a lot of the body.
Yeah, and you could say the body is, well, partially the body, but also the world, but it's it's the field of work. It's sort of the representation of what, or it contains the representation of what we need to actually work with the atonement. Like it has representations of the darkness that we actually need to correct. Oh geez. If anybody has questions about this, so we can clarify it, because I don't know.
I was thinking about reading paragraph 3 just because it talks about basically suffering and a little bit of readiness.
You know, I think we should do that because I'm not sure if we're going to be able to even start talking about healing today. So let's go ahead and do
Okay.
that.
The acceptance of the atonement by everyone is only a matter of time. This may appear to contradict free will because of the inevitability of the final decision, but this is not so. You can temporize and you are capable of enormous procrastination, but you cannot depart entirely from your Creator, who set the limits on your ability to miscreate. An imprisoned will engenders a situation which, in the extreme, becomes altogether intolerable. Tolerance for pain may be high, but it is not without limit. Eventually, everyone begins to recognize, however dimly, that there must be a better way. As this recognition becomes more firmly established, it becomes a turning point. This ultimately reawakens spiritual vision, simultaneously weakening the investment in physical sight. The alternating investment in the two levels of perception is usually experienced as conflict, which can become very acute, but the outcome is as certain as God. So we're talking about confusion of perceptions, and that they create an appearance of conflict, which eventually grows intolerable, which I have a lot of experience with, and I'm sure you do as well.
Oh yeah.
The perception of conflict being intolerable.
Well, I mean, I think we probably see the same thing when we read this paragraph, but this is basically talking about like what happens leading up to awakening and then actually how you get to awakening itself or revelation. And because this is like it's I was going to say it's the prerequisite, but it's not
Yeah,
really
this is the
something.
pain of the seeker.
I'm sorry.
So this is the pain of the seeker. This is what like
Yep.
propels you to look for answers.
Yep. But this is exactly where you come to. So for us, we have the tool called the two-part formula, which for anybody that is at this spot, this is what you do because that's how you awake. That's how you have an awakening or a revelation. But that's exactly where you get where your your tolerance for pain reaches its limit, and you're like, there must be a better way, and that's where you have to reach, because once you're there, you're ready. That's it. Like if you're there, you're ready for the better way, and the better way, yeah. I mean, that's pretty much all there is to it. I mean, for anybody that's there, we don't need to explain it because you already know. And we find people, um, well, throughout our sangha, and people that have done the two-part formula all know about this because they got to the point where they thought there must be a better way, and then they're ready and they're looking for how to wake up. But I guess something I would like to ask you is like, do you think if somebody's like not quite ready but almost ready, is there anything they can do to speed? Like I feel like even just hearing that this is the way it works can speed it up for you. Like if you're not quite ready and then you realize or you just read that like it's not going to get better, basically is what this is saying. Like it's not going to get better unless you get to the point where you are ready for the new way of thinking.
Yeah, I feel like it just depends on that person's makeup. Like what are they inspired by? Because I mean, if you're not quite ready, you're like this sucks, and you see a method that's claiming to free you from the suck part of it, or like is going to provide the answer you're looking for. But you also feel like, I can probably figure this out without this particular method, or I expect this method to be like this or like that. I don't know. Like, I think you have
Yeah.
to be. There is the possibility of having friends, like having connections that actually matter to you that are into it, and I think that would help a lot. Like having friends, having family, and seeing the effects of them waking up obviously makes a difference. But I mean, if it's all on your own volition and you're not like it's not quite intolerable, I have my doubts.
I do too. Yeah, and this is like my own uh part of this is just my own karma and like my own like squirming. But because when we have these tools that we know can help somebody who is at this point that they're ready, like that's just not good enough for me because I want to get people who aren't totally ready but like almost ready as well. I'm like, come on. Come on, guys. We can do this.
Yeah,
But just is what it is.
it really does seem like a matter of interest at
Yep.
that point. Like if the readiness isn't really there, which actually might qualify. Like I might be qualified for that. I had a lot more interest than suffering at the moment I was seeking, and then it was sort of like I saw how much I was suffering as a result of that. Didn't really recognize it. Like there's just so much that the ego can do as far as like procrastination, just like we read a little while ago.
Hold up, Trevor. I just lost you for like 30 seconds. Your screen blacked out. Did
I
you lose
noticed
me?
that we kept talking.
I think the last thing I heard was you were talking about interest, like if you're just not in whether you're interested in it.
Yeah, I was just saying that it's for me it was a matter of interest more than suffering. And awakening actually showed me how much I was suffering that I didn't really recognize before. I still was,
Yeah.
but I wasn't looking at it.
Yeah. Hmm. I'm not even going to get into where I was at before and after awakening right now. I don't know if that'll help it at all, but yeah, it. I don't know. It's just this raises the whole question for me of like, it's the whole question of like, what is the purpose of a teacher and why are we even doing this? And I guess it's just we're just sharing. One of the things the course says is like, really the only thing you're ever teaching is what you believe about yourself. So we and of course that you are where you are, you're at your level, I'm at my level, and we're just sharing this. We're saying all these words and talking about the course and blah blah blah, but we're basically just like sharing and demonstrating our own understanding of who we actually are. And
Yeah,
so this
we're
whole song
extending.
and yeah, so this whole song and dance of like talking about how there's this tool that many of us have used that works so well for people who are at this point. I don't know. That's all we can do. uh, you know, One thing that I think about with Buddhism is there's a lot of teachings in Buddhism that kind of try to remind you how shitty life can be, and they really will do that over and over again. It's like the threat of the stick, right, instead of the carrot. It's like talking about, and I mean, of course, Christians, we all know about this too. Christians will talk about this, and of course, it's in a very confused way, talking about going to hell. But Buddhists also talk about going to hell. The only difference is it's not
Yeah.
eternal. It's just,
Yeah, it's not eternal, but I mean, there's so many kinds.
yeah, it's
You have
still
no idea
really,
how long to be in any one of them.
it's still really bad. And I do wonder if like, he just this just says really quick here, tolerance for pain may be high, but it is not without limit. Well, geez, that's such a quick way of saying like that's that's a lot. That could be a lot of pain and a long time in pain, and just like being aware of that. I don't know. Maybe that's what somebody needs to hear. Is like
I
this
mean,
problem's not going to go away by itself.
even if whatever your problem is at the moment feels like a problem, there's bound to be a more important problem down the road, like something heavier, something nastier. It's coming. Eventually, we're going to get sick, or our families are going to get sick,
Yep.
or we're going to go to war, or something. Like the pain tolerance will be tested, but we have exposure to Dharma right now. We don't know if we'll have exposure to it in the future. So that's the
Yep.
trick.
Yeah, that's one of the Buddhists' favorite things to remind is like you're gonna die. Everybody you know is gonna die. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, two things to remember. Everybody has Buddha nature. You're already free, and we're all screwed. Like probably intolerably like miserable and violent ways, most likely. Best case, it's like gentle and slow. and you're still a weight on your family and society and whatever. Like there's no escaping the sucky parts of being alive. You can only really change your context and like how you perceive it.
Yep. So there's many forms of suffering, but there's only one solution. Awesome. I'm tempted to wrap us up right now. We've been going for an hour, and we should do a whole video on healing, man, honestly.
I'd agree with that.
Okay. Do we want to like these next two sections of section 3, the next two paragraphs, is there anything there we want to wrap up with or take a look at?
Let me look. Spiritual vision literally cannot see error and merely looks for atonement. Confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, like the mind becomes increasingly sensitive to what it would once have regarded as very minor intrusions of discomfort. That's pretty funny and it's
Yep.
totally legit.
100% true. Yep. And I mean, luckily, because that's what keeps you going through the process. Because if the level of sensitivity increases as you go, and if it weren't the case, like I probably just you would be inclined to just ease off of it and stop doing the practice, because like the density and the importance, the heaviness of the suffering, like before you start the atonement process is so bad that when that releases, it's like a huge relief. And as long as you have that memory of how bad it was, but then it feels okay. But that memory starts to fade a little bit, and now you're just here, and it's like, okay, yeah, it was really bad then, but it's still bad enough now that I'm not okay.
Yeah. I mean, the better you get at resting in peace and unconditional love and things like that, it's way easier to notice like an ant bite, like a minor inconveniences. Like this feels way worse than what I was just doing,
Yeah,
or like
that's
being
a good
caught
thing
up
though.
in other people's dreams. Oh my god, don't even get me started.
Yep. Yeah, let's not get started. But it's thank God for that, right? Because that's why we just have to keep going until we get all the way and attain what Jesus did. Because otherwise, like, I
Yep.
mean, who? Let's be honest. Who wants to stop? Why stop before that? Like, if we're doing this thing, why would you settle for anything less? Especially since Jesus and everybody else, Buddha, they all tell us this is what's possible. This is our birthright, and it's also inevitable. So why are you going to stop before you get there?
I mean, I have no arguments for you.
Yep. All right, man.
That pretty much wraps it up for me. There was
I
another
think
good
so.
line. Whenever you are afraid, you are deceived. Or I should put the emphasis in there. Whenever you are afraid, you are deceived, and your mind cannot serve the Holy Spirit. This starves you by denying you your daily bread,
Mm.
which I interpret as you're not in communion with Holy Spirit, and that starts to have an effect.
Yeah, for sure. Denying you your daily bread. I like that. There's probably a lot of ways you could relate that and make it practical, but I mean, basically, the way I see that is like our original state has everything that we need. There's nothing missing from that. So as long as you're not joined with the Holy Spirit, you're not recognizing your original state as you were created by God, then you're not receiving your daily bread.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
chasing mirages instead of drinking from the well, is maybe another way to put it.
nice. Alrighty, Trevor. Well, thanks a lot. It's a good
Thank
talk
you,
today.
man.
Thanks,
Until
everyone.
the next section.
All right. Take care now.